Hello and welcome to this instalment of Talkin Trim. I'm Jonathon Skinner and today we're looking at the weather equipment items related to the Triumph TR2 up until the end of the TR3B range. So that obviously includes the TR2, the TR3, the TR3A and the TR3B. And we've got an assortment of parts. Some of them are interchangeable between those models, other ones are unique, which is why I've wanted to lay them all out in one, as we've got a few kits going through at the same time so you can see the difference between them. Now when I refer to weather equipment items, I'm sort of talking about the exterior upholstery items. So we're talking tonneau cover, the soft top convertible hood and the hood frame cover at the back, otherwise known as the top boot cover or envelope cover. And like I say, I've got a few variants here, some just varying in material, other ones varying in spec. And I want to go over each part sort of semi-individually so that it gives you a nice overview of the different parts. And what I've obviously done is split them out. At the very front there, we've got a couple of tonneau covers. Then we've got two versions of the soft tops and two versions of the hood frame top boot covers at the back there in various materials, colours and specs. We sell all of these items individually. So tonneau cover is sold as a unit as such, then the soft top convertible hood is another set and the hood frame top boot cover as another. They all include the female fixings as standard. And again, there's a bit of a crossover with most of them, but some of them did vary depending on the year, chassis number, etc., which I will go over as we go through the video. Before I go much further, it's worth checking out the video links at the end of this one, which will link to other related videos that I've done, which may showcase some of the things that I've referenced in this in terms of different styles that were offered originally from the factory, as well as different variants that we can potentially offer for it. So be sure to check that out as well. Now let's work through them methodically. So we'll start at the very front. Let me just zoom back in. And we've got a mixture of materials. So the sort of beige items here are Mohair Canvas, which is the creme de la creme of hooding material. It's a canvas style material. So it's got a sort of graining to it essentially on it there. Whereas this biscuit one is PVC Everflex, so it's effectively vinyl, as some people refer to it, but it's a waterproof vinyl. And then back here we've got vinyl, which is actually the interior vinyl material, same as what we do your seats and panels in if you're ordering it in vinyl. But then actually we've got a leather version here as well, and I'll get to that element there because there are a few options when it comes to the top boot cover at the back there. But let's start at the front here. So we've got the tonneau covers. I've laid them side by side, but I've run out of room. So the Mohair Canvas one is fully laid out, whereas the PVC Everflex one is folded up at the side there. As you can see from this one here, it is a left-hand drive, as indicated by the steering wheel pocket on the left side here. It has a zip roughly down the centre, normally slightly offset to allow a bit more room for the driver than the passenger, depending on certain cars, but as a general rule of thumb, that's what they did at that era of time there. And it's obviously a pre-sewn cover, zip down the middle. Now, just to reference, before I go into too many details, what we're talking about here, just grab the book. So, the tonneau cover is obviously this cover here. So it covers up the main cockpit area of the car, has the ability to cover it all up. So, you know, maybe you've driven over to a show or something like that, having a nice Sunday drive, and you've pulled up, parked, stopped for a drink somewhere, and you want to be covering up the car so that it protects it from the elements and obviously protects your valuables, etc. So you can zip it all fully up, but then it's designed to have a zip down the middle, which means that effectively you can drive along in it, but the rest of the cockpit cabin area is covered up. It was an original item from the factory. Generally speaking though, they would have supplied it in the PVC Everflex material as opposed to mohair, but a lot of people these days upgrade to mohair. Now it's worth noting on both colours, both materials, PVC and mohair, that colour range is somewhat limited compared to interior trim colours. So just bear that in mind and see our website for details. We offer a very wide range of colours in terms of the actual colours available, but it's nowhere near the offerings of the vinyl and leather. And that was generally rule of thumb originally from the factory. They didn't offer many colours, and generally a lot of cars did revert to keeping things black regardless of the main interior trim, so just bear that in mind, especially on the later cars. Now it's worth noting on the tonneau cover, which is this part here, for the TR2s, very early TR2s, they did have a slightly different variant of it. It's what we refer to as the long version. They did maybe a couple of thousand of them to that specification, but it's all related to where your fixings are at the front of the car. So we refer to it as a long version. Like I say, it is very rare. And let's have a look. Perfect, here we go. So most TR2s had the fixings for the tonneau inside the actual aluminium dashtop scuttle crash pad at the front there, the bit you'd headbutt if you crashed. As you can see, the fixings are actually in that metalwork there. However, some of the very early cars had those fixings actually in the bodywork directly under the windscreen. As you can see there, not in the dashtop scuttle. So therefore the tonneau cover itself was longer as a result. So they're the yeah, these are the commonly seen ones here where it's in the actual dashtop scuttle capping. But some cars, like I say, very rare, did have those actual fixings on the bodywork. So that's the long version. Quite rare. I have done a video showcasing the differences between them, so do see the link at the end. This is the common version basically. So this particular version will fit all TR2s, TR3s, TR3As and TR3Bs. The only difference being left-hand drive versus right-hand drive, obviously for the pocket on that side for the steering wheel. Apart from that, they're all made the same. So pre-sewn cover, it has binding around the edge of it. It has reinforcement going around all of the outside perimeter edge, which is obviously where the fixings end up going. On the back edge there, you have a couple of darts sewn into it to help it raise and mount around the sort of corner section there of the bodywork area. Zip down the middle. The zip is exposed, which is the norm. We can, for an extra cost, add a flap if you want, covering over the zip, so do let us know about that there. The PVC Everflex is done exactly the same, same spec, it's just a different material effectively there. Fixings wise, we do supply the female fixings, so i.e. the ones that go through the cover and then mount onto the car. So we supply the ones that actually go through the material but not the ones onto the car. Generally speaking, they are the lift dots, but they did offer the Tenax ones on some of the early cars, so do let us know which version you have. But as standard, we do the lifter dot versions for the tonneau cover. It's worth noting as well, with the Tenax, the very early TR2s used what they refer to as baby Tenax, which are kind of what they say. They are much smaller versions of Tenax. They are no longer available, so you can't use them. You have to revert to the commonly seen Tenax versions there. But yeah, like I say, we supply the fixings as standard with the tonneau cover. Let us know obviously if you have the Tenax versions, we can supply those, but as standard we would be using the lifter dots, I believe. So yeah, that's the tonneau cover. Moving on to the soft top convertible hood. You've actually got two versions. Now, I'll ignore the material element of it for the time being, and we'll touch on that in a second. We've got this version at the front here, where you can see down the sort of right and left sides there, you had a seam that goes from front to back. Whereas this one here, you didn't. It was all kind of made in one piece. Then you had this kind of dart top stitching seam going around this element here, whereas this one went front to back there, and you had these sort of darts coming through the sides here. Effectively, this version here is suitable for the TR2s, the TR3s, and then some of the TR3As, the early TR3As. Now, in theory, it would also fit the late 3As. They didn't change anything in terms of the hood frame as far as I'm aware, but the styling did change. So it kind of went from what we refer to as the kind of 3Bs, because it's 1, 2, 3 as the main section, to the one piece, because it's kind of just one big section there before you get to the window area. I think the changeover was around TS 28,000, so kind of at the beginning of the TR3 range. Then that followed through all the way to the end of the TR3B range. So again, we're one of the only companies that kind of acknowledge that change. When it comes to fitting, I'd actually say this one here is probably a bit easier. It's easier to get a nicer finish, certainly around these side elements here. You often tend to find, because this is one piece here, it's very hard to get the right stretch and pull on it without creating creases, albeit subtle creases, but creases all the same around that sort of area there. So bear that in mind. If you're not particularly fussed or bothered by originality and you want something that actually arguably works a bit better, then arguably this version here, the earlier version, is more suitable there. Now, it's also worth noting on the very early TR2s, they offered a one window version, so you didn't have any of the side quarter windows on them. Like here, you just had a central window which was slightly smaller. It was an oval shape there, and again, I'm fairly sure I've done a video showing that, so do check that out. If not, there's definitely some photos. And again, I believe we're the only company that really acknowledge and offer that spec on there for the TR2s. Now, strictly speaking, the majority, if not all, of the hoods would have left in PVC Everflex, and so one of the main differences to keep in mind with that is how the windows are actually put in. For the PVC Everflex versions, we bond them into, we RF weld the plastic windows in, which was original for them, whereas Mohair, you can't actually physically do that with the welder, so you have to stitch them in. So that's a small detail there. Again, going back to the TR2s with the one window spec and the oval spec, I believe they were stitched in, not welded in. So again, we know all of this information, just trying to pass it on in terms of the options that you have, but it can get a bit complicated. And I think, can we see? Yes, there we are. So you can see this is the earlier version here where you had the seams going all the way to the back there, whereas I believe that is the later version there where you didn't have the seams going front to back, but you kind of had these elongated darts to try and get the shape around there. And it's just quite tough to get that area looking neat and tidy on that particular version there. You can do it if you have the right equipment. Certainly on the PVC ones, a steamer really does help in that regard, but that's down to either your ability to trim at your end with that tooling, or obviously a local trimmer if they've got those elements there. Now, with regard to the fixings, very similar principle again. It would have been, majority of them had the lifter dots on them, but the front end header rail was always using the Tenax ones. Again, the very early cars would have used the baby ones, but they're not available. But generally speaking, they use the Tenax across the header rail and then lifter dots in the other areas. Again, we supply all of those elements. Loose, I'll touch on all of that at the end, because all of the fixings and the way they're fitted are the same principle all the way around, but we always supply them loose. You never pre-install them. That's a very foolish game, one which I will explain shortly. Underside of it, you had this Everflex kind of draft excluder on the header rail there. This obviously it's bound all the way round, so it has the edging all the way round. It has the side gutters channels going over the side window and B post, and that is by far and away the most crucial area for the fitment, kind of the header rail and these side bits here. And again, I'll touch on this at the end with how the fixings all go, but you see a lot of mistakes being made in terms of not having the right amount of tension in between the fixings and not double checking as you maneuver organically around the fitment process, making sure that everything's going to fit around this area here. So obviously you want this to tie in with your side windows as much as possible, and also your side screens if you've got them as well. So bear that in mind. That is the crucial area there. But you've also got to keep in mind as well, these are sort of 50s 60s style engineering, and they just didn't fit that well compared to modern day ones. Everyone's used to modern day precision, shall we say, and our parts are made to modern day precision standards. We use a CNC to cut all of our materials out, but unfortunately the actual design to the cars were not that. And it's not just the element of the actual fitment process to the cars, but it's the fact that the cars were made inconsistently and the hood frames were often not exactly the same as one another compared to modern day standards, and also they've had 50, 60, 70 years of wear and tear on them, and so sometimes they can be ever so slightly subtly warped, which can really throw things out, and that is really crucial when it comes to the hood. So do talk to us about that. But anyway, getting back to the details of the hood, like I say, you have these sort of side B-post gutter channels going round, then reinforcement all the way round as per the tonneau cover, which obviously allows for the extra thickness for stability for the fixings, etc. Like I say, this later version here had these seams stitched on them to help angle it round the hood rods, hood bows that go from side to side, the hood frame effectively. The underside of those had backing on them as well to strengthen them up, etc. Obviously all of the relevant double top stitch seams are as per original specification, and then it obviously has the Everflex still on that one as well. Some of the later TR3As did actually have a welded part that went across there, which we can offer. We don't standardly offer it, but if you really are pedantic and want to go down to that detail, we can do. Again, I'm fairly sure I've done a video showing that. If not, I've definitely got some photos showing it as well. So that's effectively the soft top element of things, minus any trimming side of things that we're going to talk about, which I'll go on to in a second. And then we've got finally what we refer to as hood frame covers. Others refer to it as a top boot cover or a envelope cover. It's effectively what covers up the hood frame metalwork when it's all folded down and retracted at the back of the car. There you are, perfect. That's it there. So it goes down the back and it covers up the actual metalwork of the hood frame. The hoods come off, obviously go into the boot trunk area, and then you cover up the actual metalwork at the back. Now, there are two versions. There's the TR2/TR3/ most of the TR3As, and then there's the late TR3As. It changed over about TS 41000, and I'm fairly sure we are the only company in the world that bother acknowledging that difference there. They're very, very subtle, to the point they are interchangeable. It's all related to these corners here. This parchment level one here is the earlier one, the TR2, the TR3, and the early 3As before TS 41000. This is the later one here, and you can see what the difference is here. It's all related to the pointiness here. This one's a bit longer in this area here. If I put that over there, just as a rough gauge there, you can see. And you tended to find that the earlier ones kind of flapped around the inner B-post area as you're driving along with the wind element of things, so they kind of trimmed them back a bit, updated the design on it. And that's always an interesting point with these sorts of things. We actually had a customer recently who he had the earlier one by design, you know, that was his car, but he'd been searching online and seen a load of hood frame covers that had the shorter tail there, and he said, oh no, you've made it wrong because it's flapping around in the wing. And obviously I explained the difference to him, and we sorted it out for him. It's not a problem, but it's one of those things. Do you want it correct for the era of the car, or do you want it correct for suitability to the car? And so it's that kind of age-old argument. Everyone wants everything as original, but sometimes they're not willing to put up with the initial design, should we say. You know, you've got to remember the Triumph on their production line were evolving as they went on through the ages with these different parts. Some of the evolutions worked, some of them didn't. I'd say that's a prime example of the soft top. In my opinion, that one's a better version than that one. But that was the evolution, in theory, was to the later style one. Whereas this one, I'd say, is a more logical evolution. Started off like that, a bit flappy in that area there, unless you fix it down correctly. Whereas this one didn't have that problem as much. So it's something to keep in mind. And what I'm trying to get across there is that we have the correct patterns. We know what was correct for the different eras. And so sometimes just revert to our expertise with that, and of course we can discuss the finer points with you. Now, when it comes to the hood frame cover, as I'm referring to it, you have different material options. You can do it in mohair, you can do it in PVC Everflex, or you can do it in interior vinyl, so the same as your trim panels and your seats, or leather if you wanted. This has been done in parchment smooth leather. The gentleman over in America has gone for a full leather interior kit. All trim panels have been done in leather. The seats have been done full leather spec, not the OEM leather faced option as we call it. He's gone for absolutely everything in leather. And the reason for that being, that the hood frame cover, unlike these items here, they don't need to be waterproof. If that's getting wet, you've got much bigger issues on your hand. The rest of your car is getting wet as well. So we say that with the hood frame covers, you've got a lot more options in materials, because you can either get it to match your soft top and your tonneau, but actually in theory, it's never seen at the same time as your soft top and tonneau. It's only ever seen at the same time as your interior trim. And so we're generally of the mindset, it's actually quite nice to match it to your interior trim colour at the very least, arguably to the material as well. So yeah, just bear in mind we can offer those options there. Originally from the factory though, it would have been made in the same material and the same colour as the soft top convertible hood and the tonneau colour, so bear that in mind. Same principle again with the fixings. We supply them loose, not pre-inserted. They were ones that did change between Tenax and lifter docks. The earlier cars had the Tenax fixings, the later cars, the majority of the cars use the lifter dock fixings. So we supply those as standard, but we would obviously ask you to clarify which ones you have there. And it's obviously all pre-sewn. You have reinforcements going around the perimeter edges again. It's then edged, bound with leather cloth, top stitch, etc. Very nice covers, those, especially those leather ones. We really like doing the leather ones, and we do more and more of them for people who want everything to match. So that's a decent overview of all the parts. Now I just wanted to mention, going back to the hood as well, we can offer as a surcharge option a zippable central rear window on the hood. So do let us know if you want us to do that. It just means that when you're driving along with the hood up in place, you can unzip the window and it gets a bit of airflow into the car. It's just a central one that would zip down and flap down onto the deck of the car. It's not done as standard. It is a surcharge item because it's not original in any way, shape or form, but that is an option. Now going on to the fixings, obviously mention the fixings we kind of supply and how we supply them. So you've either got the lifter dots like that, or the Tenax like that, or a combination of the two for some of the parts. We do not pre-insert them. That's a foolish man's game. We often see on blogs and forums people asking why people don't pre-insert them, and the reason being is that the fitment process of all of these parts is organic and very individual to your specific car. So effectively, if you get, say, a tonneau cover or a hood and you just kind of place it over the cockpit of the car without any tension on it whatsoever, you'll look at it and you think, oh, that's too small, it's not going to fit. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to be, when trimmed, tight as a drum. And for that to happen, you have to fit it to your individual car. So don't get the parts and match them up to your old parts and put the fixings in the same place. That does not work either. Don't match it roughly up to your car. See where the male fixings are, marked and cut. That doesn't work either. What you need to be doing is anchoring at the kind of center and center, so you've got the tension on it, and then you're moving one fixing to the left, one fixing to the right, but in between each fixing you're applying tension if needed. And the whole time, every time you do a new fixing, you should be making sure that you're seeing how accurately it is coming around to this sort of B-post window area. Same principle on the tonneau cover as well, and to a certain extent on the hood frame cover as well. But the hood's the main crucial one. You want to be doing that all the way round, left, right, left, right, left, right, as you're going around. Each time, dummy matching it all up, pulling it round, seeing that you're going to have the right amount of tension and around a material in that particular area. Just a very brief overview. I'm more than happy to give you more in-depth photos and advice on this, but that is a very, very common mistake on both parts and to a certain extent the hood frame cover. And we see it time and time again, even with professional trimmers, where they just make an assumption that it will fit very easily. They don't. It's a tough job. And unfortunately with weather equipment items, it's a one-way street, because once you've made a hole for the fixing, that's there, it's on show forever. It's not like the interior trim where you can normally get away with moving and shifting things quite easily because a lot of it's hidden. It's also worth noting as well with the actual fixings, don't go too gung-ho on the size of the hole that you actually do. Effectively, obviously for the lifter dots, the male bit that fits through is a little pin, thin pin bit that goes through there. So when you're actually doing the fixing hole, just make it big enough for that pin. Don't make it big enough for the whole thing here. You can always make it bigger when you're happy with the position, but if you make it just big enough for that fixing there in the material, it means that you then have the scope to move the hole all within that parameter, and it will still get covered up if you follow. So imagine that fixing by fixing, you're gaining quite a lot. So that's a little tidbit advice based on our experience of these sorts of things, is you can always make a hole a bit bigger, but you can't make it any smaller. So always start small and progressively get bigger if you need to. So bear that in mind as well. So that's a real area to keep an eye on. Another thing to mention with the soft tops especially is the hood frame covers. I'd say 9 times out of 10 when you're having issue with fitting the hood, it's really about the hood frame cover. And we've seen some real examples over the years where the hood frame has been subtly bent and warped from left to right on the car, and it's normally on the driver's side. If you imagine over the course of 50, 60 years, normally one person putting the hood up, putting it down when they're out and about, you know, when the rain suddenly starts bucketing it down, it means that you're going to have that strain on the one side of the car. The hood frame will have been sort of yanked on one side of the car. You know, in an ideal world, you've got 2 people one side and they're working exactly the same time to move the hood frame up and down nice and easily, but that's not a reality for most people. The majority of the time it's done in a rush, either to stop the rain getting in or at the end of the day or something like that. So keep that in mind as well, that the amount of times we see issues with the fitment of hoods, and it's down to very, very subtle differences in the hood frame and the position of the hood frame, and that's a real crucial thing. We've been using the same templates for our patterns for decades now. We've supplied hundreds if not thousands of these kits to people worldwide, and of course there's the odd problem here or there, but normally it's not down to the manufacturing, which is all completely standardized these days. So we're confident that our parts have been made to original specification, and they're tried and tested over thousands of different cars globally. So put your faith in that element of things, and then you need to work out where the problem lies in the fitment. Is it someone's lack of understanding of how it goes? And that's not a criticism, that's just experience in these specific models. But more often than not, it's something related to the car, hood frame related in terms of slightly off camber. Even like the header rail, we've known issues where the header rail is slightly further forward on one side than it is on the other side. You wouldn't believe what we've seen and witnessed and heard over the years. So just bear that in mind. Also going down to the hood fitment section of things, the header rail here, they're normally Tenax fixings across the front there. Again, that is something you really need to be stretching in between the fixings. So again, start in the center and you're pulling one left, one right, etc., etc. The whole time making sure that you're going to have enough space and gaps at the end that you need. If you just try and match up a load of fixings and start trimming it, you're not going to have the width that you need going forward. It's worth noting as well that with PVC Everflex, it's a bit easier normally because you can get a decent amount of stretch in it, especially if you warm it up. Mohair, minimal stretch, warmth does help, but it's a bit more of a battle effectively with that side of things. So we do recommend generally fitting them in warmer weather anyway, but then if you have access to heaters or steamers and things like that, that can really help in the fitment process, certainly on PVC Everflex. But certainly on, say, a European climate, don't go fitting a mohair one in the winter. It's going to be an absolute mission. So yeah, just a word of warning and advice on that one there. Same principles on the hood frame cover at the back here. You do need to watch that stretch in between the fixings to make sure it has the right amount of tension and getting rid of the bagginess. But like I say, certainly with the soft top and the tonneau, when everything is said and done, it should be tight like a drum, and that is how you should be aiming to be doing it. You shouldn't get sort of bagginess in it, and that's the reason we've designed them the way we designed them, which is obviously based on original patterns there. Only other thing to be said is obviously side screens. TR3A side screens we have got involved in the past, and we do offer a trimming service on those on an ad hoc basis, so do contact us about that. The earlier TR2s and TR3s, unfortunately, we don't tend to get involved in, but of course, regardless of who's trimming your side screens, we would recommend obviously you buy matching materials at the same time. So that just on the roll, anything from sort of 2 to 2.5 meters is ample for that sort of thing, but obviously make sure it all matches up. So let us know about that, and we can obviously supply raw materials to match up there. I think that's covered it. Thanks for staying with me. It's almost 30 minutes now. Please remember to like, subscribe and share with other classic car enthusiasts out there. Of course, check out the videos at the end of this one if you're doing any of the restorations for your TR2, 3 or 3A models. Be sure to check out obviously our YouTube channel and our website. If you've got an inquiry about restoration, hit me up either via email or the contact form on our website. Look forward to hearing from you. Any comments you got below, just leave them below. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Thank you.